Hello, everyone. Okay, great. I'm so excited to be here tonight for a live edition of the Private Practice Show. This is going to be so much fun. I'm going to be joined by an amazing guest, Allie Moulton, who is going to be talking about specializing in private practice and also in doing advocacy work through her private practice. Y'all, Allie is incredible, and I cannot wait to introduce her to you, and she may look familiar. Thing here, and then we'll bring her on. As we're talking, if you have questions, please ask them below so that Allie and or I can answer them. Hey, Allie, how's it going?
Hi, Jena. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you so much for being
Of
on.
course.
So, y'all, Allie has been on the podcast before. I looked it up. It was 2 summers ago. We were trying to figure out what it was. And so 2 summers ago, you came on and you talked about your private practice journey to date and really about you like taking the leap into private practice and everything else. Now, 2 years have gone by, and so I really want to share where you are now, but not everybody knows where you came from. So can you tell everyone a little bit about yourself and then how you got started in private practice?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started out my career at a children's hospital. I started out at Kennedy Krieger Institute in Baltimore. I did my clinical fellowship year there, and I worked there for 6 years, and then I went into the schools. And then the pandemic hit, and I think a lot of us did a reevaluation of what's important to us, what we want to prioritize. Already one of the Jena F's is going to come up, which is family. I think it just gave a new perspective and what I wanted to do with my career. I had told you when I first met you that private practice had been on my mind, here and there throughout my career, but I just didn't take the leap. And then I just reevaluated where I wanted to be as a mom, as a wife, and as a clinician, and took the leap into private practice. So the summer of 2020, I took, it wasn't your boot camp, but it was like the roadmap through private practice. And then I had been in touch with you back and forth, started my practice in early 2021 and slowly decreased through the schools of, I was full-time with doing it on the side and then part-time doing it on the side. And then I took the leap last school year. That was my first full school year. This is my second full school year being in private practice.
I love it. And things are very different for you and for your family now, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like I love how, you kind of followed what I teach, right? About like starting on the side and like testing the waters and getting some of those first clients, which actually our listeners may be curious. How did you get your first client? Do you remember?
Yeah. It was a coworker from school. A friend was concerned about their child's speech sound production and said, I know someone who just started a private practice and I'm sending them, I'm sending you to her. And then that happened with another coworker and another coworker. Those are my first clients. They came from coworkers.
I love it. So here's why I think that's great, right? First of all, is that you had to tell people that you were starting this practice, right? So if, there's lots of people out there who would love to have clients, right? But like, if you don't tell people, if you don't set that intention, like literally out loud, no one's going to send you clients, right? So that's thing number one. The other thing that I really like about when people get clients from colleagues, former colleagues, professionals that they know, is like these people knew the quality of your work and who your ideal clients were, right? And so like they were able to send you good people. So that's another thing why like telling people that especially professionally, is a really good move.
For sure. And it's scary at first because you're making a leap. I was in a great position where some of the first people I told were my administration, and they were super supportive. They just wanted the best for me, and they wanted me to do the best in whatever setting was going to be the best for me and my family. So I was lucky in that aspect. And then I was lucky to have supportive coworkers.
Yeah. Totally. So let me ask you just a quick follow-up question about going to part-time. Did you go from full-time to part-time at your school that you were at, or did you leave that one job and get a different part-time job while you scaled your practice?
I stayed at the same, working for the same school district, same school. Um, it had to work for them ultimately. They could have moved me to a different school. But I think something that was on my side was we were coming out of lockdown. They didn't want to shake things up too much in terms of staffing if you wanted to, return to your school. So I was 5 days a week, and then I was 4 days a week. And I was working 6, 7 days a week when first starting it on the side, not full days, but that's what I needed to do in order to then be able to switch over. But that was the schedule I made for myself. So
Yeah. Well, and we talk about this a lot, that sometimes you have to kind of enter like a busy season
yeah.
of life on purpose
Mm-hmm.
in order to have more free time later, which is what this has ultimately resulted in, right?
Yeah. And I mean, it's a journey. So, thankfully I've got a great coach. um, so I've been able to rework my schedule with your coaching on how to do that in the best way for me, my clients, my family. But yeah, I mean, I was working a lot at the get-go, but I think that it's what I needed to do in order to get my name out there, in order to build my side caseload enough that I could leave and go full-time.
Yeah.
Privately.
And what kind of went into that decision, right? We've got lots of people who are watching right now, right? We're recording this at the very beginning of May. And I think that there's probably, some school SLPs out there and maybe OTs too, who are also kind of like, wow, I would really like to do this. Like, I'd really like to start on the side. I'd like to decrease my hours. I would like to have this be full time, like sometime in the next year. What went into that decision for you as far as like being able to really leave that school job and take the leap into full-time private practice?
A lot of crunching numbers, which I know us SLPs don't always love to do, but we do have to make sure that we are able to, at a minimum, replace our salary, figure out benefits working, like whether it's through your own business or whether spouse, partner, anything like that, you're doing benefits through that. So you have to have those ducks need to be in a row. You have to crunch some hard numbers. You have to understand, things that we took for granted for a while as employees was, taxes coming out automatically, benefits being provided, all of those kinds of things. And then, again, at the minimum, you're making your salary that you're already making it at the school, or more, which is the goal. And then feeling comfortable enough that you have a steady enough caseload that's then going to get larger. But I was comfortable leaving at the point that I was at because I would say probably 3/4 of my caseload filled at that point, and I was getting more referrals. So I knew that there was going to be more, there were more kids that I was going to be able to see. But I needed to have those things. I was also very ready to leave the schools. So I think that if my caseload hadn't been as full, I still would have taken the leap because for me, family needed to come first. And I wasn't able to do that while working in the schools. I can't speak for everyone, but my quality time with my family was turning into me being in the same room as them doing work for school while they were there in the room with me. And that to me was not what I wanted. So I was done, and I was ready to resign.
Yeah. I love that, right? I mean, well, I don't love that you were in that position,
Right.
right? But
I mean, you coached me through that
totally.
time.
Yes, but family first, like I think that
Yeah.
is important. And I think sometimes like because, most of us, love our profession, right? And, everything else, like we do tend to put our jobs first. And
Yeah.
sometimes like we have a couple of wake up calls where we're like, wait a minute, why is the quality time with my family while I'm doing like writing IEP reports or something like that? Like that's not sustainable, it's not fair, it's not whatever. And like I gotta get out of here. Like I gotta put my family first.
Yeah. I mean, I needed it to be spending quality time with my family and my focus on my family, not 100% of my focus being on other families. Like I needed my family to come first. And that was something that was a struggle. And I needed to feel well supported and appreciated. And that was shining through private practice. I mean, I just felt very fulfilled. And I didn't have a lot of the red tape that I was finding in the schools, when it came to, coaching parents, guiding them through special education processes, providing individualized services, spending a lot of time with them. I mean, with some families, you become, an extra family member sometimes. And just making those connections it was very fulfilling, and I loved it.
Yeah, totally. Because, that's one of the things too. I hear a lot about people who work in schools and hospitals, like less so early intervention because the family is, present and everything.
Right.
But people do miss that family time and they miss the connection with parents, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they know how important parent education and coaching is to like carry over, for example. And I think that's one of the main reasons too why people go into private practice is because they are looking for those connections and they're looking for like the kid or the adult to make more progress than they are like in the traditional setting, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you go from maybe seeing a family once a year at an IEP table to, for me, being in, their living room or dining room once a week. And it's just a huge difference.
Yeah, I love that. So my next question really is about like when you first started your practice,
Mm-hmm.
did you like pretty much work with everybody or like, I know that you've done some specialization, but how did that kind of happen for you?
I did. You know what? I was used to being a generalist. I had been semi-specialized when I worked at Kennedy Krieger, because something that a lot of people don't know about me is that when I went to grad school, there was a dual master's program of learning disabilities and speech language pathology. So I was able to pursue both avenues at the same time.
Yeah.
And so I was able to specialize with language-based learning disabilities at the beginning of my career. And then, when you go into the schools, you're a generalist. It's whatever child needs your services, you're seeing them. And so I kind of leaned into that when growing my caseload, because I was like, well, I've been a generalist for 9 years in a school. I can continue to do this, but through coaching, collaborating with great colleagues, and just following my gut, I knew I wanted to be more specialized. And so in the beginning, I saw kids of all different profiles. And, for the past 3 years, I've just kind of been honing in on exactly what kind of clients I would like to work with. And then also building a network of other speech language pathologists in the area that I can refer out to for areas that I'm not specializing in.
Yeah. And I think that that's like kind of that confidence to reduce the pool of people that you want to work with also really comes over time.
Absolutely.
Right? Like I'm a huge advocate of people in the very beginning of their practice working with anyone that they feel comfortable and competent to
Sure.
treat, right? And the reason why I care about that is because I want people to start to build their caseload. I want people to start to
Right.
have money coming in. I want people to start to build that confidence. But over time, you do start to be able to be like, you know what? I am getting enough referrals now, and I'm getting more
Mhm.
referrals. And I actually want to make sure that these referrals are coming, like that they're the right referrals,
Right.
right? And so you do start to kind of like shift how you're marketing your practice or how you're talking to other professionals about the practice so that they send you the right people.
Absolutely. And I've shifted kind of through the past couple of years, and I've redone my marketing materials, because my marketing materials now are vastly different than when I first started. And I don't offer certain services that I used to, and I offer new ones that I didn't used to. So it's been nice to be able to hone in on exactly what I want to be able to do.
Yeah, totally. And the good news is that when you're your own boss, you get to make those decisions.
Yeah.
Right? Like imagine if when you had been at, at Kennedy Krieger or anywhere else that you said, you know what? I don't want to offer this. I don't want to do groups anymore. So just not going to do groups anymore. They'd be like, no.
Yeah, no, therapy wise, I needed I needed to be a generalist. Evaluations, they really let me specialize in, which I was very thankful for. But yeah, you need to serve the population that is coming to see you at the larger place of business, whether it's a hospital, an outpatient clinic, a school.
Yeah.
That's your job.
But so great when you get to then finally decide like who you want to see through your practice, right?
Yeah.
So tell people kind of what does your private practice look like nowadays?
Sure. So I'm still a mobile practice, which is something that the families in my area really want. Every time I kind of like poll them informally, like, what would happen if I got an office? I always get, please don't. DC traffic is just rough.
Yeah.
It just is. Like any major city, you just sit in traffic. Boston, LA, New York, like you're just sitting in traffic. So it's much easier for them when I pull into their driveway instead of them piling a bunch of kids into the car and driving maybe 5 miles that takes them 45 minutes. So I'm mobile, which is also great. It has, it has its pros and cons. But that's how I deliver evaluations and therapy services. And I go to private schools if I'm able to work that out with the family and the private school, that I can have a space, and because I don't contract with those private schools, but we've got some really great ones in the area that have been very collaborative. Preschools, I deliver service in. And then I'm also doing special education consultations and advocacy. So I'm going into the schools in a different capacity now to advocate for the children and help the families through that very confusing process.
Yeah, which I would love if you feel comfortable, and I'm sure our listeners would be curious to hear more about that, right?
Sure.
Because I had brought that up recently with one of our growers as like an option, and she's like, "Oh, I don't know. I don't know if I could do that." And I'm like, "Well, I don't know. Like it seems kind of important." So, I mean, you do you, right? But I think that
Yeah.
like, when you've been in a school, you clearly know how to navigate, situations much better. And like the poor families don't, right? Families have no idea how to navigate these situations, and they're looking to professionals who do have their best interests at heart.
And I think that we're so well qualified to do it because we are the people that know communication development, and we know how that impacts academic development. So who better to be sitting at the table guiding families through this process and helping them advocate for what their children need when we know what happens from the beginning, up till, high school and transitioning out of high school. So I think we're very well situated to do that as speech language pathologists, and I encourage any speech language pathologist to look into this who's doing private practice to help families. How I got into it, my training's always been interdisciplinary. That's always been a part of me from undergrad, graduate school, clinical fellowship on. Everything's been working with other professionals. So this kind of thing, I think, comes a little bit more naturally to me because that's how my mind is. I'm always looking at the whole child, and I'm always, knowing how to collaborate with other people working with that same child. Having experience in multiple settings, I think, is advantageous because you know what it's like to get the recommendation from the other setting when it doesn't work in yours. You also know when you made an oopsie when you did that in the past. And it's okay, you're learning from that. And, especially if you've been in the schools for time, the inner workings of the IEP meeting. You've sat on the school team. You know what the schools do because they've always done it. You know what should happen based on our unique position as speech language pathologists that kind of have a foot in education and in healthcare. And I think we as a profession are great at advocating for the changes that occur, sometimes slowly, sometimes quickly in our field that impact education, but education just moves at a slower pace. But I think that we do a really good job about making those changes in a child's plan to reflect what's new and what we know is going to work for kids. So I highly encourage any SLP to look into doing this. I'm very upfront with my clients. I'm very honest. I'm not a lawyer. if you're looking for a special education lawyer, that is not me. And I've had to turn some clients away because that's where their case was going.
Yeah.
You know, I could tell they were looking to make a landmark case. They wanted this to be going to court. That's not me. Or if it was just, I'm just a very honest person. If something is too complex and I know it's out of my wheelhouse, I'm not going to go on that journey with you, but I'm going to help you find someone else that can go on that journey with you.
Yeah. Well, I love this too because, like, so I, full disclosure, I've never worked in a school. I'm a hospital person, but I would imagine that there's many times where a clinician is sitting at an IEP meeting and they're feeling like this kid's getting a raw deal here, right? That this kid needs more, that there needs to be more support or different kind of support, but they're not like allowed to say something, right? And
Right.
so I think that, you go through enough meetings like that, and then you start to be like, you know what, like this isn't right. Right. And so again, like for me, it wasn't IEP meetings, it was like family team meetings at the
Right.
hospital. But similarly, people would be like, oh yeah, no, we should discharge him like next week. And I'm like, he has aphasia. He can't talk.
Right.
What do you
Right.
mean we're going to discharge him next week? Right. So same kind of a thing. Right. And so I think it's fantastic too, like about private practice specifically, is you have an opportunity to work and live completely outside of the box. Right. And
Yeah.
design your own box. And so like if you want to, hop back into the schools, but on the other end of the table doing advocacy work, like again, what an amazing gift to be able to give the parents and the child to really help them get the services that
Yeah.
they need.
Yeah. And I mean, a big part, I was just explaining this to another SLP the other day because they're like, well, what do you introduce yourself as when you go around the table? Because everyone has to have a title at the IEP meeting. And I was like, I never say I'm an advocate because I know what it feels like to have that title stated. Like you immediately tense up. So I say my training is in speech language pathology and learning disabilities. I'm here to help guide the parents through this process. And then you just kind of see everyone like relax because they're like, okay, she's here to collaborate and help the parents versus she's here to fight.
Yeah. Well, I think that's actually a beautiful way to put it, and it's honest too,
Yeah.
right? And it puts everyone like at ease a little bit more, and probably helps like get more out of the meeting than like you said about everyone being tensed up and whatnot.
Yeah. You don't want it to be a fight. You want it to be a conversation. And, you know, the big thing that I have been seeing with parents, and I saw it when I was on the school team, but I, could only do as much as I was allowed to do as a school employee, is it's just very confusing. It's a lot of terminology that is just not natural unless you're in special education or speech language pathology, OT, PT, school based, not hospital or working with adults. And families are on these timelines and they have to learn things really quickly that they've never seen or heard before. So having someone to help them through that, I think, is just really
Yeah.
critical.
I love that. So what maybe this is a weird question to ask, but what percentage of your like private practice caseload or, time spent is doing like one-on-one, therapy evaluations and whatnot versus the advocacy work?
I would say it ebbs and flows based on the time of year. So primarily my day-to-day is evaluations and therapy because there's not always a consistent, there shouldn't be either, a
Yeah,
consistent
true.
meeting happening all the time, or an eligibility meeting or a reevaluation meeting or something like that. So I think there's like busier hotspots in the year. So right now, the month of May is going to be really busy. Everyone's kind of in wind down mode or panic mode, depending on where they are in the school year. There are initial referrals going through very late in the school year. There are report cards that came home not too long ago that are showing reasons to, start the process. So, and there are yearly annual meetings. So May, I think, is really busy. I think right at the beginning of school ticks up a little bit if we've got parents who do initial referrals at that time, or if, the family wants to meet the new team and kind of get things situated. And then I think right after winter break when parents, you know, spent more time with their kids and may have noticed something, or that, you know, first quarter report card they're starting to talk about or notice things, or there's been a parent teacher conference. That's kind of like the 3-ish times a year where things pick up. So I haven't yet figured out how to make that the most consistent, just because that's the nature of the special education process, is it just kind of ebbs and flows throughout the school year.
Yeah, which totally makes sense. But the thing that I think is really cool about what you've done with your practice is really adding, you know, additional income streams by adding additional services.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so, you know, I think that a lot of people get into private practice and they really think they might have dreams to do some other stuff, but they, you know, start off obviously with, you know, individual sessions and evaluations. And for most practices, like that really is the bread and butter, right? And it sounds like it obviously still is for you.
Yeah.
But like when you can sprinkle in some of these additional like revenue streams, not only is it great for, you know, diversifying your income, but also just for, like for your own like creativity, you know, your own, you know, like, you know, being able to do some different things, mix it up and really go with whatever you want to be offering through your
Yeah.
practice.
And I think that, I don't know, I think that it is a good stream of income for SLPs to do if they feel comfortable advocating. I think one of the hardest things, and I was telling another SLP this recently, is that we have been so used to doing most of the pieces of at least the consultation part of that service that I offer for free for so long, and for so many hours for so long. Like doing like it is expected that you do a full file review when you're in the schools, right? And the file could be one piece of paper, or it could be 5 volumes, but you have to review them. And now being able to have that as part of a business model and charging for that feels very weird at first, but something you have always coached me with is that your time is valuable and you need to show that it's valuable, and you can't do those things for free if you want people to value your time as well. So I think it feels weird at first charging for that kind of service, when we've just done it, whether in a hospital, outpatient clinic, or school. You've always done the file review and come up with the clinical opinion as part of another process that it gets looped into. And you have not broken it apart and charged for it.
Yeah. Well, correct, right? And not only have you not charged for it, you may or may not have been paid for it. Right? Like
So,
those are some of the
yeah,
things.
my whole career I've been doing it for free. So.
Exactly. So, but the value is very high, right? Like whenever you're I mean the value of therapy is obviously is high, right? But it's like the value of evaluations is higher. And then like the value of like consultations and like we're having like more of a consultative model is probably like at the most high, right? And so therefore, you know, again, we should charge for our services, but I totally get why, you know, clinicians in the beginning have a hard time, you know, with maybe, you know, feelings of guilt or that kind of thing, just because again that they've never done it before. But remember in you know, again, what we do is extremely valuable, and it's very valuable to obviously the parents and families, but it's like priceless to the child who's going to be able to reap the benefits of this.
Right, right. And another way to diversify income is something I've started to do, is coach other SLPs to do this, because I feel I feel like, again, I feel like we're very well suited for this role. I think just taking the leap and telling yourself it's okay to do it, is a big part of it. And again, knowing that's something that you've done part of other processes and not gotten paid to do feels very weird. But I've been working to empower other SLPs to take the leap, and start offering this service as well, because the families that you do therapy with on a weekly basis are going to want you to be the one to advocate for their child, because they have strong relationship with you and there's so much trust. And if you can offer that service, they don't have to go find someone
Yeah.
else. Now, again, staying within our scope of practice and not being lawyers, we have to, be careful with that. And also you need to know federal and state law when you're advocating at these meetings. But, you've just got this established rapport with families, and it's a sigh of relief. Like I've had families that I worked with for, my whole time in private practice. And then when I started offering this, it was a sigh of relief for them, because they were like, great, now we can take you with us. You know, before we kind of just struggled on our own, but you've known our child for years.
Yeah. Right. I mean, again, that is insanely valuable to those families, right? Because it gives them tremendous peace of mind. Yes, you're gonna, review the file or whatever, but you know that child basically inside and
Right.
out, and you are a person who can step in, and just to be able to, again, I mentioned peace of mind, but just like the calming presence. Allie, you're also just a very calm person that I think that a family would also just really be like, you know what, like I'm gonna be able to be here like for my child and
Yeah.
advocate as a parent. But now here I have a very trusted professional who's also going to be advocating for my child, who knows, like, the ropes of the schools and whatnot. And again, that is valuable, and I'm thrilled to hear that you're teaching other people to do this.
Yeah, I think it's just a really special role to be in, when you can allow parents to be parents at such a tough meeting, and you can ask the tough questions, and you can be collaborative, but the tougher person at the table, and allow them to feel their emotions, and just be, mom or dad or grandma or whoever it is. Just allow them to be that family role, and feel their feelings, because it's hard to turn that on and off and on and off and on and off for a parent, and they feel like they have to advocate, but then they might get upset about something. It's their baby, they want what's best for them. So just allowing them to be them, I think, is just an invaluable thing that I can give them.
Well, also such a high stress situation, right? For the families, right? And so like, I
Yeah.
mean, yes, you may also be experiencing stress a little bit, but you're able to like probably monitor that a lot
Yeah.
better than they are, right? Like, they may hear like people use a word or something that then is kind of
Mhm.
like upsetting them or triggering them or whatever, but like you're able to like probably keep much more level-headed and just be able to continue through, which is really what those family members need.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Well, I love this. I mean, I love that you started your practice. I love like what it's helped you be able to achieve both, family wise and professionally with, the flexibility. But I also really like, this, new service that you're offering that also happens to be a new revenue stream. And so for people who are watching slash listening who would like to learn, more about you or learn more about, educational advocacy, where can people find out about you?
Sure. So my Instagram handle is at Moulton Speech. You can find me there. I'm less often on Facebook, so I would start at Instagram. And then my website is also Moulton Speech. And if you're in Virginia, my business is Allison Moulton Speech Language and Learning.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on for a second time,
Oh,
Allie. It's been really fun for, I've been talking to you in the meantime, but I think it's hopefully
yeah.
fun for our listeners to hear kind of like where you started when you were very first on the show and then, where you are now. And I think you're a wonderful human and you're doing so many
Yeah.
beautiful things. And so like keep going for yourself and for your family and then all of the families that you're helping.
Thank you so much, Jena.
You're welcome. All right. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you for watching. And thank you, Allie.
Bye.
Bye.